but we did have that breakthrough, which we weren't sure is going to happen. Remember, we had a 83.33% chance on a Monday, based on a 3-month look back, that we're going to have a single break on the opening range, or on the initial balance, I should say. And we've had that double break, 8.33%, not very likely. No break, of course, is off the table right now. So we've had that. The second stat, though, is the power hour breakout, and this is where it's going to get tricky for Leo and Nick in a couple of minutes, because according to the statistics, at 3 o'clock, right? At 3 o'clock, power hours 3 to 4, right? And the bell rings at 4. So a little bit less than a half an hour, we have 90% chance statistically that we're not going to make a high of the day during that last hour. Just glancing at this chart, you're going to say, well, it looks like we're going to keep going and make nonstop highs. But only a 10% chance we're going to make it, according to Edgeful. So it'll be exciting to see how that goes today as we get into that last power hour. The other observation I wanted to point out to everybody was Dr. Copper. I'm going to just go down to my market analyzer, click on the Dr. Copper uh, quote board there, and you can see we're just on a tear. I mean, this is just breaking out to the upside. We've powered through R1. Yet this is yesterday's high, this green line right here. We could take a look at some of the gamma levels. We're past the 1-day max. This is the Mentor Q gamma level, 1-day max. We're past that. Call and resistance is way down here. So we're making progress to the upside. Take a look at the daily. And on a daily, it's just smashing new records, right? There's nothing but blue sky up above. So what I had to do, I had to put a fib extension up just to give me some kind of targets, right? And remember, there's 3 points in a fib extension: low to high to retracement. Plant that fib extension there, and then boom, you're going to get these numbers, these levels. The 123.6 is the next step up, approximately 5.05, and then you got a couple other targets here, 138 and 150. So we'll leave this for Tracy to digest tomorrow to tell us why exactly this is doing what it's doing. But this area of what I was going to call resistance, single top, double top, breakthrough, is now an area of support. Over and over again, resistance becomes support, support becomes resistance. Bullish here, off to the races. All right, so I just wanted to point those two things out. So we have some awesome dudes here from OrderFlow Labs, and we're going to bring in Leo and Nick into the scene. How you guys doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing great.
Pretty good, man. It was great talking to you pre-show right now, and I'm glad you're doing all the heavy lifting. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it up to you guys.
Appreciate that. I'm actually having a bit of a technical issue right off the bat, so I don't know if we can flip over to Nick's screen and I can figure out
Sure.
the issue I'm having right now.
Let me get it shared. So while Leo, has everyone kind of managed today's session? It's been a little interesting. I think we pretty much came down towards what I guess Friday's previous day high around 56.50s on ES, and I guess 19,750s area if you haven't quite rolled to the June contract on the Nasdaq as well. But we pretty much had a decent retest in that spot, and I guess ever for the last hour plus, we've just been making this a larger move higher. I didn't lose everybody, did I?
No, you're here.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
Nope.
it changed a little bit on my screen there as far as what I was seeing. There we go. Now I can see everybody and see what we're actually looking at. So yeah, I don't know if anyone caught this move basically around lunchtime, this, time frame kind of moving higher up here. I actually anchored a VWAP off that last kind of retest to go make a new low down here around 19,850s, and we have just been stair stepping higher. Leo, I don't want to say the O word or the G word, but do we think This is at all options. Do we think on options
Oh,
week? This
is
is
this options fault?
causing. I mean, are we going to blame options already? It's a little early. We're not even in a power hour yet, but this looks like a decent move higher and kind of that move out of last week's range that I was looking for as I was doing some of my prep last night heading into this week. I kind of wanted to see volume build on the I guess the March contract above 750s on NQ. And I know we're looking at the June contract here, but we pretty much got that. That was kind of the right around that previous day high spot, pretty much here. I guess that's around 19,900s roughly. Let's just call it roughly because I'm eyeballing the differences in the contracts right now.
Right.
Pretty much around here on the 930s. And once we finally did get that breakout move higher, is the bottom in? I don't know.
That's a great question. I mean, I watched the morning segment and Tanja, Crudele, everybody was, pretty bullish, and we're seeing that play out. So great call on their part this morning to call out, the particularly bullish setup that we had going into the day. I think it'll be interesting to pull off some trades here at the end of the day, just because we have broken out. Jim mentioned those stats earlier about making new highs in the power hour period. But there is a very peculiar stat that I've tweeted quite a bit about during the power hour segment, which is if we make a new high between the 3 and 3:30 period. So the market profile folks would know that as L period. So if we make a new high in L period, we could expect M period, so the next 30 minutes, to extend two new highs about 70% of the time. So that's going to be a trade setup that I look for this afternoon going into the close. And then you were mentioning to me just a minute in chat about gamma or options or something like that, talking about calls being rolled up or something like that. So I don't know anything about that, but maybe you can explain what you're talking about there.
I mean, I am by no means an options expert, but you start to see, I mean, we see it a lot. You see it with kind of those end of month flows and, beginning of the month flows at times. And during power hour, during that last little M period where you just kind of get that move higher, that bigger flush, whatever you want to call it, stops getting blown. And we just start to kind of march a little bit higher. At the same time, if you do look at a little bit of the zero DTE options flow, you may start to see some of those call strikes that whoever you want to call them, dealers, degenerates of zero DTEs, just kind of buying and rolling those strikes like a little bit higher, 10 points, 5 points, whatever it is. And it can kind of just continue to stair step and make us those M period highs, as Leo was talking about. So I'm curious. I haven't seen them start to roll to higher strikes on the zero DTE chain just yet, but it's something I think we can look for if Leo's thought of what may happen here during M period is possible. You kind of see it sometimes. And when you get these violent moves during power hour, I mean, I'm not a fan of ever trying to fade a move, but when we're talking of a full week of balance around those lows and us on Monday starting to build above it and making a strong kind of push out, I'm just not going to be the first person to step in front of that freight train, especially after what was it, an 11% correction in NQ or NES and almost a 15% move down in NQ. It's just as we start to bottom potentially, I probably want to be a part of that move higher rather than trying to be the first person to step in front of that and get steamrolled.
Right. So you're thinking the better play is continuation type of trades for, basically expansion to the upside as we march higher.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Let's see, I'll zoom out a little bit. Oops. Yeah.
Now,
this is kind of
interesting,
that-
we're coming up to last week's high.
Mhm.
Again, this is the M contract. I think it's right around 160, 170. So I think it'll be interesting to see what if we get a reaction there, especially from an order flow standpoint. I'd be looking for some type of absorption up there. That might be an okay spot for potential short term sell where you might be able to ride it back down into one of these breakout spots, the initial balance high, or even the 80s where we had lots of bid liquidity that came in and kind of supported this push. You would expect if we get down to that point, uh, that would hold as a continuation trade, right? So bidders in that spot that were kind of supportive of this move higher would then, re-step in, right? So we'd look for that to be support. So there's two areas really on the chart for a long as a continuation trade, right at those 80s or at the IB high.
So you'd be looking for about what is that, 60 points or so to start thinking
Right.
about, hey, do we get that rebid off?
Yeah. I mean, I want to see a good enough pullback to join this move.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'm not a breakout trader. That's not really my style. So I at least I want to give something to join this move for continuation. And if we don't get it, we don't get it, right?
Well, let's hope we do. Sometimes I feel like I go into the afternoon thinking I'm going to trade power hour, and then it just turns into NQ being stuck in a 20-point range, and there's not a lot of opportunity, and then you wait for MOC, and then suddenly something happens, and just hopefully we don't get that. It would be interesting to see a decent pullback. Pullback. Are you seeing any absorption up here at these highs?
A little bit, but price is still pushing up higher. I mean, we're starting to go sideways a little here, and seeing quite a bit of offer side absorption. If we're looking at your chart, we're, just to point out, this is a delta profile that you'll see like the red and blue bars on Nick's screen. And so those blue bars are indicative of buyers lifting offers. So like a passive offer type of liquidity being available there in the 140s to 150s. And what we look for from an absorption standpoint is for price to stop moving higher on that positive delta and start to go sideways. And then see if we can't position for some type of counter trade with that absorption, where basically buyers are not able to push through the passive offer liquidity that would be on the order book. But price is still continuing right now to the upside, so it's not necessarily a trade I would want to get involved with right now.
Yeah, it's just kind of a tough spot. As you were saying, at last week's high, I think we were even, if I was looking at that 30-minute chart, aren't we coming into like March's view up a little bit higher? Yeah, and kind of the bottom edge of I think the old range we were in towards the earlier side of March. So definitely a spot that sellers could still, somebody big could step in for all we know and push us back into this balance going back to March 10th, basically.
Right.
So it's just a tough spot to want to initiate. As bullish as I kind of was leaning a little bit into this week, this is that first spot where it's like you could get absolutely just walloped if you're, trying to long it here. There definitely was that breakout long, probably around, oh, whatever that spot was. I guess 20,000 even on the June contract, March
Right.
contract, excuse me.
Right.
No, June. Gosh, I can't even. I hate rollover week.
Yeah, it gets
Do you
confusing.
enjoy trading this week? It's a
No.
little weird with the split volume and then
No.
just, fixing all the charts, making everything look pretty and work again after 3 months of solid trading on the previous contract. I've just never enjoyed this week personally.
Me neither. I size down and just take it easy. There's no reason to hurry up and get involved, especially with the volatility that we've had.
Right.
It's momentum long this market has not been a winning strategy. So, just watching this right now, unfortunately, there's not a banger of a setup, but we'll see what we can find.
Yeah. And speaking of volatility, we haven't really had that potential tweet bomb event volatility catalyst at any time during today's session. It's been very quiet. I
Right.
think even there were parts of last week where you were just kind of like afraid to do anything at times because you can just get punched in the face by a Trump tweet out of nowhere. So Yeah, it's been awfully quiet, which is probably why we were just kind of consolidating and then finally got that boost out. You just may be seeing some buyers stepping in and trying to maybe form that bottom, but I don't know. I'm still always afraid to initiate anything with a longer time horizon when we've been moving like we have the last few weeks, where any positive momentum has just gotten shoved back down repeatedly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have that kind of memory, short-term memory of, being in some of the, I think somebody on the morning segment was talking about, taking, like, you can take longs when the market, generally is in a downtrend. You just have to be very strategic about them. And some of those long trades, for runners and such have gotten slapped in your face, basically right back to your entry quite a few times. At least it's happened to me.
Yep.
So
I'm sure
that's been a fun time.
And I'm sure some people may have seen me trade live every once in a while. Leo, I mean, how many points are you looking to capture in theory on an NQ trade in this kind of volatility? Like, how are you really navigating this? Are you very much see profit, take profit? Are you kind of just scaling in, scaling out, and having a lot more trades in a day? Or I guess how has this adjusted your style when when we've been moving the way we have?
Yeah, so when volume is really high, I tend to size down. So first, basically first and foremost, size down. But with that sizing down, I also adjust my stop and take profit expectations, right? So if I trade five, maybe I'll trade two or three. But then if I use a 15-point stop on, normal day, then I'll use a 30-point stop with that adjusted size. And normally I'm looking for anywhere from 15 to 20 points on a normal trade. Whereas with when we have volatility like this, um, I'm looking for tw 25, 30, 35, and sometimes you can let momentum take the wheel, so to speak, and let some of those trades just kind of run on their own. So I really try to let that expansion, um, you know, guide my trade or let the momentum kind of take over versus, sometimes I'll take at very distinct, like, 15, 20 points and then 30, 40, et cetera. If I'm, I scale in and scale out of a lot of trades. And so if I can catch more of a momentum type of move, then I try to hold some of those positions for a little bit longer. One, because I have less size on, so it's not, it's easier from a psychological standpoint. But two, because, sometimes when you're in part of these moves, you and then the momentum's going, like, you don't even need to think about it. And that's what I like about trading NQ is that it just you get that immediate feedback in that price movement.
Yeah.
You can definitely, kind of get a feel for what it's doing and, what, basically, like, if you're in a good trade with NQ, you kind of know it.
Hmm.
And then you can lean into that by adding on pullbacks or whatever that might be. Whereas, with other markets, it's not, at least for me, it's not always that clear.
Yeah. I was going to say you definitely know when you're in an NQ trade and you're about to be underwater very quickly.
You're
I'm
either
sure we've all been
right
there.
away or
Yeah.
wrong right away.
And it can hurt. Like I've definitely been probably somewhere around here, like initial balance high, shorting this, like
Mhm.
going back to whatever we were talking about earlier, the 20,060 evens and change, like trying to get initiating a short here, and then it comes back, and we're just kind of lingering, and then I get punched in the face, and then you just start feeling bad, and it's like I should exit, get out of this trade, and maybe you try to scale in more, but that's where NQ can just get you into trouble. We did have another
Absolutely.
nice little punch up there again, Leo, on those highs, back up towards the
Yeah.
165s. Looked like
Yeah.
sellers in a touch.
Yeah. I saw a bunch of selling come in, but, they're all of that bid side, push isn't, they're really not getting a big enough move for me to be interested. There is a pretty large offer right now in NQ at 69.75. So I wonder if we punch that and see what happens after that guy gets filled. Um, I don't know if you noticed this, but about maybe 2 weeks ago, we started to get this 1,000 lot
Yeah, that big guy.
order, the big
He's been
guy.
that guy. I'm not a fan of his. He's been moving price. He's been
Yeah.
driving kind of getting that liquidity pull towards him when he throws. I mean, who's throwing 1,000 lot on NQ, especially in this type of market? But the guy's been doing it, and he's been doing it during Globex. And I say guy, like I have no idea who this is. If it's an institution, a very large retail trader, who knows? But it seems to be somebody. I don't know if they're playing a little game, but they have been doing this for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's kind of weird to trade around. He's
Yeah,
got
it's been
filled a few
definitely
times too.
it's definitely been challenging because it's not normal to see that size on the order book in NQ. And there's been a few times where that type of size has taken fills and also taken more than the original 1,000.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of interesting to see that dynamic come into play right as we made a turn in the market to the downside, because that guy basically showed up prior to this big push to the downside on the higher time frame.
Yeah, and I don't think he's going anywhere, to be honest.
I mean, that's fine. We can party with him.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand his logic, his game. Someone day trading? Is this someone hedging a large position? I have no idea. It's been a little frustrating. It just because he'll randomly come on the books, and then so there's been times when we absolutely just run away from that large order, and times when we just can't quite pull away from that magnet. And yeah,
The
it's
first time he showed up, we had, he was sitting on the offer right in the middle of a range, and he just sat there. Um, and we liquidated, I want to say 150, maybe 200 points in NQ. And then somebody bought that liquidation, like market bought it, and we rallied all the way back almost to new highs that day. That was the first day I remember seeing it. I don't remember which day that was though, but it was definitely up near the highs, the all-time highs.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of when, honestly, Leo, was it like 22,300 on the March contract? He was like dancing around the 98s or 99s, I feel like up there. And
I
that's
can't
kind of
remember.
when, like the next day or two or session later, we started that move down. And I know that was like OPEX Friday and it kind of just gave us that initial push, but then we just kept selling. But I feel like it was somewhere up there around that, at least that range high we were sitting in on NQ, that 22,300 spot. That sticks out to me. I could be wrong.
Right. Right. You might be right. So Nick, I'm kind of curious what you look for in the afternoon. Do you trade the afternoons frequently, or is this going to be a new endeavor for both of us? Because I'm not necessarily an afternoon trader myself.
No, if anyone doesn't know my story, I was a 9 to 5 guy that now is trading full time. So for me, I'm very much a try to get out of this market. And this is not just like in the current state of the market, of any market we've been in over the last couple of years that I've been trading full time. I am a big fan of this just psychologically and just as this being kind of what I do every day to not be staring at charts 24/7. So for me, if I can get, am one of the worst Globex traders ever seen. So for me, it's New York Open to about Euro close is my bread and butter where I like to make my money, get my points and get out and go touch grass. That's really my style historically. It just, the speed of the tape in the mornings, just the volumes there, it just tends to be a little bit more kind of what I'm looking for and how I can trade. Also, I can get away with some things on NQ at times just because of the volatility where I may be able to get in and out of a trade, like Leo was saying earlier, for 20 to 30 points and feel good about it and call it a
Right.
session. You can get that one or two good trades with NQ just because of the volatility. It's not going to hit your stop potentially. And you can do that in 30 seconds, a couple minutes and have a good day. So I'm a
Right.
fan of doing that and then going to do something else with my life, go on a run, go outside. I'm a new dad. So for me, it's getting that extra time, and the autonomy that trading has provided me with getting to spend more time with my little one is always nice too. So I'm a fan getting away from screens, but I will tend to gravitate back to my desk around 2 o'clock Central Time for the power hour shenanigans, especially on a day like this Wednesday, where who doesn't want their popcorn, and getting ready for our lovely chairman of the Fed, Jerome Powell, to give us his perspective on what's going on in the world. And is inflation still mission accomplished, defeated, or still lingering a little bit? So excited to
You're,
do this on Wednesday as
I
well.
think you're more of a macro guy than I thought, Nick.
I'm a big macro guy, only on
Yeah.
FOMC days, just to see if I can scalp a few points out of what comes out of Jerome's mouth.
Well, if we can't find a trade setup today, in this power hour session, we'll definitely find one on Wednesday, right?
I mean, yeah, we 100% are gonna, we can always find a trade during FOMC. The question is, statistically, are we better off just closing our eyes and pushing a button, or is there some logic to trading something like FOMC? Like, do you do it regularly every month?
No, not really. I'm not that great. I think my hit rate on FOMC days is basically like 50, and it probably has caused me more pain than gain in the long
Yep.
term. So I try to shut it down, but I'm sure we can find something to do on Wednesday.
Oh, I think we'll be wildly entertained. I'm sure we can have a little fun here. I don't know if it's going to be good, but I'm sure we can absolutely find a trade. That's the old saying. If you're looking for a trade, you can always find one, and it's hard to not be looking for a trade on FOMC day. So that'll be a lot of fun Wednesday at 1 o'clock Central Time, when the statement is released, and then you and I get all the fun and shenanigans when he steps up to the mic. So strap in, folks. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Does anybody have any predictions for what they're going to do on Wednesday? I think what is the market saying, that no rate cut?
Fed Watch Tool, when I was looking last night doing my prep, was still at hold sturdy at 4.5%. I'll let someone smarter than me in the chat, though, tell me if that has changed in the last 24 hours, because you never know. The 10-year sold off a little bit, but
I think it'll be interesting to see what he says, even if they don't do anything.
yeah, it always is.
They always try to catch him. I think, like, the last FOMC, they were trying to catch him in this, like, get him into the political side of the conversation. And he's so good at just, dodging that question. Like, hey, this is what I'm focused on. Not going to discuss anything else. Like, we have the two mandates. It's inflation, or, price stability, or, employment.
You said you didn't know I was such a macro guy. I didn't know you were such a macro guy, knowing both of the Fed's dual parts of the dual mandate.
It's kind of necessary to know some of the stuff, right?
Exactly. I would say when it comes to that, I mean, I know enough to be dangerous and keep me out of trouble day trading, but it's especially when you're trading something like NQ on a 300 volume time frame. Like, macro doesn't matter in that 30 seconds that I could be in and out of an NQ trade. I don't care what's going on geopolitically. And that's why trading's so fun, man. There's a million ways to trade depending on your time frame, what you care about, what you look for, indicators you use. It all can adjust, it all can change based on kind of what you're looking to get out of it. If you're swinging on a multi-week time frame, then yeah, macro might matter a little more. What comes out of somebody, if you're swinging crude on a multi-week time frame, I mean, that a lot of the geopolitical stuff will matter. But for 30 seconds that I'm in and out of this NQ trade, I mean, all that matters is price and volume.
That's right. But I mean, you have to have something to do while you're waiting for a great setup, right?
Of course.
So what do you do besides pontificate on the macro thesis, or what Powell's going to say or do when you're waiting for a trade setup?
A lot of that, this is where the last few years I am absolutely blessed to be part of a number of communities and people that I've gotten to know, including yourself, around the space. I think doing this full time without a good group of trading buddies, friends, people that you can blow off steam with, like Leo was saying, in between those setups, is what you need to not only keep yourself honest and learn new things and, hold each other accountable in some ways, but also just continue to learn and then just have fun with. If you're not having fun doing this, even if you're doing it kind of part-time in, sneak in that hidden screen on your work computer as you're doing other things. If you're trading, like I think some of us and some of these people in the chat probably are, you need that group of people around you that'll keep you laughing, whether it's something stupid like sending memes back and forth, just, random articles, sharing information. That's the best part about doing this every day. Is it feels like I'm at the water cooler in an office where you're blowing off steam and having fun and screwing around a little bit in between those trades. I couldn't do it without the larger group of friends that I've accumulated in this space. It would be a very lonely, dark, dark room, dark corner if I was truly doing this 100% alone. And I've been blessed to, get to do it in times in front of an audience for the last year plus. And that in itself is a whole different ball game of, trading in front of people. If you didn't know this about me, I'm very much an introvert. So this has been a good way for me to kind of continue to evolve as a public speaker and just be able to articulate things I'm trying to learn. I am by no means an expert in trading. I mean, half of what I've learned, this may not be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. Who knows? Some of it is from Leo. So if I screw
If it's from
something
me,
up,
it's bad. Yeah.
if I screw something up, I can kind of lean on him and say, hey, this is your fault. I thought I heard you say this one time, or this statistic on M period lows I thought was something that I could put into practice.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, trading buddies, man, that is the best part about those breaks in the market. You need them. If you don't have some, find some. Yeah, learn more from your peers. It's some, like Leo says, random things to me offline that is just, it's something's interesting or a new thing he's testing out or playing around with, and it's a lot of fun to continue to learn and grow your expertise that way as well.
Yeah, a lot of what I do in the afternoons to keep myself occupied, waiting for a setup, or if I'm not cutting it up in the OFL group, is looking at different ways to look at the market. And part of what I'm excited about the Ninja Live, I tweeted about this, was being able to see other people's style, right? Like Tanja was on this morning. She's obviously very dedicated to the mental game. I love the fact that she said she gets up, gets sunlight, goes for a walk. Like some of that stuff is super critical and not really talked about enough. And to be honest, like if you tweeted something about like what your morning routine was, and it was like, hey, get up, get sunlight, and go for a walk, probably not gonna you're not gonna get much interaction, right? So like some of that good quality stuff that you should be doing just doesn't get the type of engagement, unfortunately, that somebody with some flashy setup has.
So more monitors doesn't equal more friends and higher P&L.
I don't think so.
What about a Lambo in the background?
That definitely helps.
I think that does.
Yep,
I'll take one of those, man. There's a TV behind me, but I don't have a Lambo, so guess I
right,
need to do more.
right. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, some of the other styles. I know Sarah Strat Sniper is going to be on. I know Merritt Black is going to be on as well. So a lot of good quality people to watch, whether it's us or other folks. I think there's a lot to be able to learn from what's being shared here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely learning other people's styles, because like everyone knows, there's a million ways to trade this market, and there's a million things that
For
might
sure.
be in similar patterns that we're noticing or talking about or trying to execute on in the market. So it's just even hearing it a different way, even if someone is talking about something like volume profile or market profile or whatever, and you kind of hear a different version of it. I mean, you retain information that way too. So it's really cool that the NinjaTrader team has brought in such like diverse groups of individuals and traders that I have never had a ton of exposure to seeing them trade, learning their styles, learning how they articulate the market. So it's really, really cool that they've kind of done this and we get to experience that. And then unfortunately, everyone gets us potentially in the afternoons to round out their trading session. So hopefully everyone learns something eventually from us here. We'll do our best, but no promises from me there.
Well, we're gonna get you to promise something, but I don't know what it is yet.
I promise to not trade I promise to not ruin a green day trying to grow my profits on FOMC day. That's for
Oh,
sure.
there we go. That's a good one. Don't let Nick kid you. He's a very good trader. Nick's a fantastic trader. I think I have a ton of respect for Nick, and I'm excited to see Nick cut it up with the charts. I haven't been able to watch you execute some trades, so hopefully we'll catch some of that too.
Speaking of which, elephant in the room, I am having shoulder surgery on Thursday of this week.
Oh, how about
So
that?
I am not somebody, and this will be a debate for the chat too, because Leo and I got in an argument about this offline, and apparently I'm the only person that really doesn't use hotkeys to execute NQ in this market. So I would love to hear from everybody in
Do
the
you
chat.
even trade if you don't use hotkeys?
See, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I have to deal with. I don't think I'm weird for being a, point and click executor of NQ. I would love to hear from everybody in the chat. Do you use hotkeys? And if so, do you have brackets set into them? Do you just do buy and sell and flatten? Like if you do use hotkeys, what is the depth of your setup there? Because apparently I'm the crazy one here who doesn't use them, but will now be forced to do so to execute trades since my mouse clicking hand will be locked up in a sling for a few weeks.
Well, I
So I'd
guess
love
we'll
to
have to
hear from
teach you how to
everybody.
use hotkeys.
I mean, I guess we're gonna have to.
We have this little LVN right here, just right at 50. We made this high. We had a bunch of selling come into it that kind of exhausted. We went sideways. I'm really interested in taking a stab at a short right here. What do you think about that?
Back up towards where? Sorry.
Right here at like
150s?
150s.
Yeah, I could see it. Kind of at the bottom, yeah.
I don't know. We have this micro, like very small pullback, but we have a clear distribution right here. And I think it might be worth just risking right off the highs. I'm going to throw a couple of micros on this.
Let's do it.
We'll start with two, and then let's see. We'll see if we get some momentum going into this, we'll add into it. The only thing that I hate about this trade right now, though, is that there's that 800 lot order there at 160. So if the market does want to go check that out, I'll get stopped out of this trade. But basically, the idea here being on this volume profile here, we have a very well-defined distribution. And so we had this push up where we built volume all the way through, a little pullback into this LVN right here. And that's a great setup for some type of continuation trade. What we want to look for is this to rotate through the 120s and make a new, small low right into here. So my first take profit is going to be right here at these 120s, which I'll click out of if we get there. Seeing a little bit of buying on the tape right here.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. Yeah, I guess we did get. Oh no, I gotta roll. I was trying to see if you were getting a similar setup on ES as well. But I'm still on March, so it's gonna look a little weird. Now I gotta roll.
Seeing some bids come in here at the 120s, kind of layering. I'm going to go ahead and take one off. Since I didn't really get to add to this position, we were just kind of went. I'm also a little new to executing on NinjaTrader, and so I don't necessarily have all of the cool things figured out. But yeah, I think this was pretty straightforward. We have a clear distribution on the profile. We had this push up, pulled back into that LVN. We saw that stall out a little bit. It's a good enough spot for some type of counter trade for that new low. So I think I'll probably put my stop here at break even on this trade, because if we do push higher now, I think we may make new highs on the day, and I don't want to be trying to fade that in particular. And then we'll just look for these 80s where these bids were earlier, for a final take profit on this trade. There's also this ledge here at 108. You can see it pretty well
Mm-hmm.
on the profile, and you can see what happened there. There was a pretty large offer that it got lifted out of the market. So that could also be a roadblock for getting into these 80s that I'm looking for.
Leo, you don't want me to say it, but I can say the G word,
Oh,
right?
go ahead. Yeah,
The
for
safe
sure.
place.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at kind of where we rejected on this NES, it's right around
Oh
but
boy.
Leo's least favorite thing in the world, which is big round number gamma levels, and we basically hit 5,700 on SPX. We peaked above
Nick,
it and failed
look,
back inside.
we
So Leo
tested
hates me for bringing this up.
we tested last week's high right here, and we're just finding sellers there. Just finding a little bit of
But
resistance.
but is it a little weird that it also happens to be that big round options number?
No.
I just laugh sometimes. It can be that simple without depending on the same information, looking at it two different ways. If you want to look at the MGI version of it or just the big round number on the S&P 500. Now Leo's mad at me.
Okay. That was your one time to say gamma.
I never said the G word. I said G word.
Same thing.
You're not wrong.
Anyways, I just moved this anchored VWAP I have on this chart to this swing high.
Yeah, I was about
Because if you'll notice this leg to leg, well, you'll understand the leg to leg profile is basically this this delta profile starts at where this diamond is, and basically that tells us where the current swing leg is with one of our tools. Basically, it tracks volume in the particular leg of an auction. So instead of like a composite profile where you're looking at the entire leg, this is going to break down, rotations within that day session. And so what we're seeing right now, kind of not a great look for my shorts, is the fact that there's so much bid side activity here and price isn't really pushing lower. So it may be a scenario where I bail out of this trade and just call it good enough, where, we do have a pretty large move. We got a little scalp off of the highs that, was a decent risk to reward. Got one off for 20 points and then, didn't really get the runner to go. But if we do make progress into the 110s, I think there's a good chance we can at least get down to these 80s. So I'm just kind of gonna wait and see what happens here.
So I do something weird during roll weeks too. I may not roll all of my charts in theory, may keep one on the March contract. Leo, I'm seeing like a positive 1700 delta. It was that big order, that big like 700, 800 lot that came in. It was around 19,900 on the March contract on NQ. Did we see anything similar on June, or do we think that may have just been somebody potentially rolling? I don't know.
I don't know.
That's where I was kind of like you're talking about covering, and I'm wondering, can you get another 20 points out of this in theory?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I just, I hate seeing a bunch of consolidation with all this bid side activity. Basically, what that tells me is that there's sellers, trying to, sell this thing, but there are bids that just keep refreshing, right? So
Mhm.
if you looked at an order book, you would see, sellers, hitting that bid side liquidity, but the, the bids keep coming in, so to speak, right?
Right.
So that's the only reason that I don't love this unless we
There
break
it
it
goes.
right around here. But you can see even all that sell side activity is happening, we're still seeing lots of offer side like sweeps on buyers, kind of lifting that offer, trying to sweep the order book a little bit at the same spot too. So it's a bit tricky.
Leo, on your fancy time and sales over there? What's it highlighting? What's
Oh,
the
okay.
strategy that
So
you're doing over there?
this is something that I've used for a long time. And, so basically like a normal transaction would be on the bid or on the ask, right? And so that's the black background with blue would be somebody lifted the offer. Red text would be somebody hit the bid. Where it's highlighted would be somebody lifted, right? So if we have a blue highlight, that means somebody lifted the current offer. So like maybe there was a one lot on the offer and somebody marketed in with two. You would see a one and then a one behind it that was highlighted. So that means somebody's basically marketing in more than what was available at that time on the bid or the offer. So it's kind of like indicative of sweeps on the order book, where you're trying to spot aggressive activity in one direction.
So do you have a take profit on this, or are you still?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just waiting to see if we can break lower, if we get into this ledge right here, um, and potentially liquidate a little bit into these 80s. That would be ideal. Um, but I'm not getting, you know, a big time breakdown vibes, if you will.
I mean, I could press the bid button. It might help.
Yeah, go for it. Does the if I'm short and we want to have the market go lower, is that a scenario where we just need to get you to buy it?
Yeah, me buying the highs would definitely be an indication of us probably getting close to like a limit down type move, just a violent flush out of nowhere. Because I'm a terrible breakout trader. I know we're not in a breakout scenario really at all, but anything where we're getting close to like the high of the day, me trying to long it is just a recipe for like a liquidation type move on everybody that
Mm.
was buying that high.
Well, if anybody else is short, let's see if we can't get Nick to buy these 15s to 18s right here.
I wouldn't mind buying it like 10 points lower to at least taking the stab at that at least like I said on the March contract, that big positive delta that was sitting there.
Right.
At least I could lean into that potentially. But it could
Where
also
was that at?
on the March contract.
Oh, the March contract.
March contract, yeah, about 1700 roughly, right around 19,900.
I wonder if that translates to this ledge here.
It probably does.
Yeah. All right. So here's a scenario where I'm just going to go ahead and cover. This is one of my favorite tools. Basically, it's something that we'll get into at some point, but it's basically telling me that Delta went from extremely negative over time to flipping to positive. So I'm just going to use this as an exit point, even though, we're in a decent trade here. Just because if we have buyers that are aggressively trying to push this market higher, I would like to, secure the profits on this trade and be done with it. So I'm going to go ahead and get out here. And there we go.
I guess I should have
That was my first try, my first trade on NinjaTrader.
Woohoo! Woohoo!
Woo!
Did you hit that?
I don't know. Somebody else hit that.
We got sound effects. Love it.
Yeah. And the surprise factor is a bonus.
So now from here, what would you say? How confident would you feel in theory us making a new high of the day, like we were kind of talking about when we were coming on air?
Well, my favorite setup, which hasn't happened, is we would have to make a new high before the next period opens.
Which is what, 9 minutes?
Yep. So it seems like a pretty good exit so far. That we saw that buying come in, got out of that short, and the market's trying to rotate up. a logical spot too. I mean, that ledge is definitely indicative of, somebody with size lifting the market higher, trying to push this thing. So it makes sense to see some buying pressure in there.
Kind of right back down. Yeah, it's still stuck pretty much around 5,700. What is the spread on June right now? 50 points? About?
For NQ?
No, sorry, on the March
Oh,
contract to
for yes.
March to June.
Man, once I roll my chart, I forget about the last contract, honestly.
I do too, but it's like until we get to like Thursday or Friday when June is like 70+% of the volume, it gets weird. Or you have months like December's expiration where it kind of, I mean, we don't roll until like the following Monday because volume still was like waiting on the end of the year.
Right.
I don't know. I hate roll weeks. I'm going to say it again.
I think most traders really despise the fact that we have to do roll week every 3 months. Because it's not just like today, we're actually transitioning from the March contract to the June contract, right? So volume is basically split between those two, and there's all kinds of funky stuff that goes on. But last week, even like Thursday, Friday, even the week before the actual contract roll, is, kind of, I hate that too. So it's almost like, you know, it's like 2 weeks or maybe like a week and a half that you just have to be a little more on your toes, I guess, than normal. Time frame. This chart is on a 300 volume chart, so this is super zoomed in as far as time frame goes because, the process that we use from an order flow perspective is really just looking for volume, bid and offer delta, and so the execution side of our screens are going to be really short time frame, and then over here we'll have like 30-minute charts where we can zoom out and have that bigger picture view, being aware that that push into prior week high that is now resistance. Obviously that makes sense because it's when we're testing highs like that, it's not always going to be a straight blast through. So yeah, but the execution time frame on this chart is 30 minutes.
Yeah, when you're let's say planning your week, coming in, looking at the markets, zoomed out view a little bit outside of your 300 volume here. I mean, what is your, I guess, longer time frame of choice to look at to kind of plan, execute off levels, look at MGI, like really kind of dissect going into the week? Well, how do you really do it? I'm a fan of like 1 hour and 4 hours, but I'm curious to get your perspective.
So I really use this 30-minute chart. And if I'll condense it down a little bit. So for me, most of everything that I'm looking for is going to be more automated than anything else. And the reason for that is because I want to apply a more of an automated system to what I'm looking at, whether that on the execution time frame or on the planning time frame. And so I use that 30-minute period because I also use a TPO chart, so market profile, and some of the concepts for market profile as well as volume profile. So for example, if we look at this box here, that tells me that we were in a balanced range in that box. And so in the when we start to break, like this morning, we were trying to break out of that box. And so for me, this is not necessarily a signal necessarily, but hey, an awareness. We have prior highs over here that started this balance area, and we're trying to break out of it. And so what I'm looking for is that for that continuation move, as long as we maintain outside of this balance area. So I always operate from the perspective that we move from balance to imbalance. And so when we have this like shorter time frame, or I guess medium time frame balance area, it lasted for a few days. And when we start to break from that, I want to be aware that we're breaking from balance and that we have a potential for new price, not necessarily new price discovery in this case, but price discovery to the other, outside of that balance area. So I use the weekly time frame, and this volume profile actually it's anchored to the start of this balance area. And so I can see things that stand out from this, which is, this low volume node here. And so what I would look for, even though, I didn't have the opportunity for this trade on stream, but this area right here would be an area of interest, just because of that low volume. Like, we haven't done, much volume in there. So I look for those low volume areas for confluence, for, if we're breaking above them, as we pull back into them, look for them to be support, and then the opposite for that to be resistance. What about you? You said 1 hour and 4 hour.
Yeah, when I don't have the lovely OrderFlow Labs MGI to auto-populate for me. I mean, I still do a little back of the napkin prep every week and kind of just define other areas that are interesting to me that maybe don't have that specific, the previous week's value area high, value area low, just other things that I can eyeball and kind of, find if we get a larger traverse of value spots that I'd be interested in potentially taking, whether it's a swing trade or a a trade I can feel pretty confident potentially in if I also get some triggers on, more price action concepts that I can then execute on at some of those longer time frame levels. You can feel pretty confident, maybe not necessarily holding someone like me for a 20-point move. Maybe this turns into a 50 to 100-point reversal or reoffer or rebid off of, like we were saying, the bottom edge of that balance area versus the top. Like, there's just other spots that I can start to eyeball and maybe take out. Plus, I like to look at things more than just NQ, I guess. So for me, I kind of, I still dabble in ES daily, I would say, or weekly. I'll
You kind of blushed
throw
as
some
you
ES
said that,
trades.
I think.
Got what?
I said you kind of blushed as you said you dabble in ES a little bit. Like,
I mean,
like it's
I
your
know
side chick.
she is. It just there's times there's times like we're currently in when the VIX ticks up a little bit and ES moves a little more wild the way NQ we're accustomed to it moving on a daily basis. So sometimes instead of sizing down in theory on the NASDAQ, I may just trade similar size on ES and take trades that way. It just, you're a little more familiar with NQ moves and you trade it on ES. And sometimes I just feel like ES likes to abide by MGI levels a little more than NQ does at times, versus wicking out of a value area low by 20 points and in theory stopping you out of the trade, versus ES may go to the tick or a couple ticks below it and you can still live in that trade and let it actually play out. So sometimes when the vol ticks up, yes, I will dabble a little more with ES.
You're
Call me
making me
whatever you
want to
want.
look at
It's
an
just
ES
the way
chart
I
for some
trade. I'm
reason.
still here.
Yeah, you're making me want to trade an ES chart.
I mean, I'm going to throw one on for Wednesday.
Yeah, we should do that. Yeah, I'm trading MNQ, but execute. Yes, I'm charting NQ and trading MNQ. Ninja does allow that natively. You probably can Google cross trade Ninja micros and be able to see the setup there. You just add a second data series, and then but it has to be on the same time frame as the NQ data series. But yeah, it's pretty easy. It takes literally 5 minutes. Anyway, so yes, you were saying.
Yeah, I just like it a little bit sometimes. Sometimes you don't. I've said this before in front of people, but I use this as the example. Sometimes you don't want to be thrown into the back of a van and driven down the streets of San Francisco, so you trade ES. That's really my logic. You don't
I
want to be just
see.
thrown in the back and whipped around and punched in the face and taken on a trip. You can just trade ES, and it's like you're kind of just cruising sometimes.
Hey,
It's
so
like a
that
nice, relaxing
offer
Sunday drive.
is having a little fun. He stepped down to 39, and when we got close to him just now, he pulled off. So then where do you go? Oh, he pushed it higher. So then he moved it to 48. That's a fun game.
That guy.
Hmm.
But we got 30 minutes to the close here, Leo. We're in the M period.
Well,
How
we
are we
didn't make a
feeling
new
about
high in
of the
L
day?
period. So the stat that I was looking for,
Is invalidated?
it's not invalidated. I mean, it's just there's no, the data I have basically says when L makes a new high of day, then 67% of the time roughly M will make a new high. But since L didn't make a new high, I wouldn't be looking for that trade. That doesn't mean a long is a terrible idea. I just, I don't have the stats to say we'll make like a new high on the day.
And I know you're a big stats guy. I mean, one of my favorite ones from you that's kept me out of a lot of trouble is the single print stat, or when there's more
Mm,
than one set of single prints.
right.
Outside of, I guess, like you were saying, some of the more market profile ones, like what are other ones that you really use to kind of guide decision making with statistics that you have to kind of back it up? That you at least you're taking a more high probability setup.
Yeah, I mean my favorite one is the 5 minute mid, which I tweeted about this weekend. There's a long thread about that, which played out, a couple of times. I took a few trades off of that this morning. So there was this push here and then this push here. I had some really good stats behind the usage of the 5 minute mid from an opening range standpoint. The single prints, the new high and L period. Um, those are my main go-tos. I don't have a whole list. I think, well, the other are like the standard overnight high low breaks or the IB, the initial balance high low breaks. I think those are great to have in your pocketbook. And today was a pretty good example of that, where if you have an idea like along, today, like if you're looking at pre-market and you get a long setup before the market opens, we are, say like 70% closer to the overnight high than we are the overnight low. And the overnight high or low, one of those being taken out, is usually betting around 90 to 95% on any given look back period. And so I'll use that for take profits, final runner targets. I'll use that to help guide where I should cover a potential trade, and also maybe where I should stay out of a trade. I've talked about that quite a bit, where if you do get a long setup and you're right near the overnight low, maybe you want to wait for that overnight low to get taken out first, for example. What about you?
Yeah, a lot of them I've learned from you and your lovely Twitter threads that are very good and very educational. I'm still waiting for part 2 of the single prints thread, and then
Mm,
waiting for that dissertation, thesis, whatever we want to call that you're spending all this time and keeping me waiting for part 2. Uh, but yeah, it's things like that, just that I always hear in passing, and then you kind of research and you're like, okay, that kind of makes sense. But I would say sometimes like how quick I'm in and out of trades, like I wouldn't use them to guide, at least I don't use them to guide entries, but keep me out of bad trades, I would say
right.
is a lot of what I do. For example, you can refresh the single print stat, but it has kept me out of fading trend days a lot of the time. I believe you said, or the data said it was what, roughly when there's a second set of single prints, we only actually fill those in the session like 12% of the time or something
It's
like
like
that.
20% of the time. It's very
20%.
low. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's super low probability after that second set of us getting a larger move down. So you really should be looking for a dip to buy at that point when we have that second set of single prints. So stuff like that has just slowly like gotten into the back of my head. And like I said, keeps me out of bad trades more than gives me like I would say the most high probability setup to take, long or short or whatever it is. I think it's because I just have a very natural, like, see profit, take profit, scalpy kind of mindset when I execute in trades. And so much of it just being based on um, things like volume profile and MGI, and then kind of what we're seeing on a shorter time frame with volume and delta. I can, you can get away with those scalps, I say, without that larger statistical backing of like a full sessions perspective. When, like we said earlier, I may be in this trade for 30 seconds and I'm looking at what's happening on the tape right now in the next 5 minutes in theory.
Right, right. Shreddy said, what's the benefit of trading micros versus minis? Nick, do you trade micros or mini? Like, what do you mostly trade?
So I trade minis most of the time. It really depends. In my personal account, I've actually gotten away with it, away from it recently, but I used to do more than a day trade type hold with micros where I may swing a couple, like if I caught a larger move or I thought maybe we're at like a swing bottom or swing high and I can short a few micros or long a few micros on a situation like this, potentially near kind of last week's lows, then yeah, I may hold them for a couple days and take a larger move. But for the most part, I trade minis. I think someone asked me this question very similar last night. And I actually am a fan of, especially in situations in markets like we're in right now, where I have been punished in theory sometimes for not letting a trade play out given the wider like ATR, the wider range of some of these rotations that we've had intraday, where I'm still very much like, okay, I'm going to take 20 points. So I set my take profit or 30 points and I'm out of the trade. But realistically, that like swing, that leg of that move that I was entering based on went another 60, 70 points. And that's a great situation where I can still capitalize on a lot of the move, but in theory, be scaling out of the position. So for me, I'm trying to learn to incorporate micros more so that I can really hold for a full rotational move and actually capture more points in theory while scaling out of the trade, taking profit off the table, leaving runners, maybe going stop break even on the last couple, but allowing that same trade thesis that got me into it to actually fully kind of play out. Like if there was something that invalidated me taking profit, like that's a situation where I'd rather be in micros and kind of scaling out as you go, like you were just doing. And then
Yeah,
you saw something that shook you out of the trade a little bit, that positive delta flip that kind of came in there and gives you a reason to close. In theory,
right,
if I don't have that reason, I should still be in the trade and I can do it by sizing down a little bit with a couple more micros.
right. Now, do you scale into your trades, Nick, or are you all in scale out?
On NQ, I typically will scale into like a 2 or 3, realistically a 3 lot. That's about 99% of the time going to be my size. So I'll scale in with ones, but on ES, I'm usually going in full clip. That's
Okay.
that's just me.
So you pick your spot. And I mean,
I'm a
because
little
you said
strategic.
earlier, the NQ, ES, like you have those spots where it kind of holds to the tick, so to speak. And so you just kind of, you have to be very, very, um, I don't know, very selective about where that entry is. But once you're in, you're full size in.
Yeah, and I've looked at my stats too over the last year.
Yeah.
I'm a much more profitable ES trader. I think it's exactly what you're saying, Leo. Like I get stopped out of trades that I probably should have scaled into on the NASDAQ at times, or
Right.
I could have taken a little more heat because I have, in theory, a better entry versus ES just behaves the way it behaves. And I don't have to be, or I guess me being more strategic on a single spot that I'm going to enter at full clip, that risk reward, I guess, changes because it just doesn't move the way the NASDAQ does. So there's probably something there as far as if I scaled and was a little more selective on how quick I get into an NQ position.
Right.
I'm also pretty bad too on like, and I guess this is part of the reason that may happen to me too, is I don't the way NQ moves where there's times when it'll rip out of like it takes out a previous day low or an overnight low and will rip out 30 points. I'm so stubborn at times that I won't enter because I in theory didn't get that kind of a low wick, it moved below and took off in those first like 10 points. If we're 30 points above that spot, I may just stubbornly say nope, I missed it. And then it continues to run for another 100 kind of thing. So,
I've been there before
yeah.
for sure.
That's my love hate with NQ. That's why I say some days, like I said, you want to go on a nice Sunday drive. You don't want to be beaten up, getting whipped around in the back of a van. So we trade ES.
Mm,
And call me soft. It's the way I am.
soft. Everybody in the chat call Nick soft. Hey, quick question. What we have like 10 minutes before we come up to the, like all the market on close activity, the 50 algo and such. Do you have any trade setups or things that you look for to like scalp that last 10 minutes? Or is that just something that you watch and observe to give you some type of context for the next session or maybe even for the overnight session? Do you
I
have anything
mean,
that you pull from that?
you're gonna hate me again. The only thing I like to use in the last 20 minutes as far as to guide is based on just what am I seeing on the 0 DTE activity in the last 10 minutes? Because we see
Oh,
those. I know, Leo, you can hate me, but that is what I may kind of guide myself towards. Not necessarily a bias towards the end of the day, but potentially that move on ES towards that whatever strike is gaining the most activity towards the close. And as we get towards MOC, you just kind of see that flooding of some of those option orders. So I don't know. You're gonna hate me. That's kind of how I use end of day setup sometimes, and it works.
no,
Sometimes it doesn't.
I was talking to Mentor Q the other day about what they do and the stuff they do with the 0 day and the gamma and whatnot. I mean, everybody kind of jokes about the fact that um like I don't like options or something like that. That's definitely not the case. I think where I get particularly, and I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but basically like, ever since the 0 day, phenomenon started in like 22, whenever we had the Wednesday, Thursday strikes or Tuesday, Thursday strikes or whatever, it was like everybody came out of the woodworks, talking about 0 DTE and how options move the market and nothing moves the market except for options, tail
Mhm.
wags the dog, etc. And it's just like, you know, if you look at the volume in the futures markets from prior to 0 day until now, the volume is relatively the same. There's nothing significant that's changed. Like even if the single print data that you talked about earlier, that didn't really change between 2018 to 2022 versus 2022 to 2024. I'm sure Edgeful has, similar type of, statistics that they've looked at and noticed those same type of things. So, yeah, it's definitely a market that's growing in volume. But, one thing and I'm not an options expert at all. So, take that for what it is. But from what I understand, you can, market makers can hedge 0 day trades with other 0 day positions, and not it doesn't always necessarily go. That workflow doesn't always go into the futures, and then when it does, well, one of the benefits of being an order flow based trader is that you can see, that order flow is coming into the futures markets if those hedges and such, need to be put on.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's not necessarily that options suck or that it's all, fake or whatever, but it's just the fact that some people, not everybody, try to make it more than what it is. And I think
I
that's
think
where
the best
I
way to look at it is just another tool in the tool belt that kind of
exactly
gives you an idea of volume that's occurring in the market. And it could
right.
be something like this, where if you're seeing a ton of, the next strike up, unfortunately it's around 5,700, but it could be SPY, it could be whatever it is. But if you're starting to see that call buying come in towards the close here at these higher strikes, like, yes, it could be a hedging mechanism against a move down, whatever it is. It doesn't matter to me in theory. I am just looking purely based on volume I'm seeing coming in towards the close for an expiration that is in the next 10 minutes. Because a lot of the time, price just tends to not necessarily follow those orders, but it's more liquidity in the market that's hitting. It's more volume trying to drive price a little bit higher. And they can, like Leo was saying, use mechanics that are for hedging with something like futures, or they could also be, covering that position by selling the higher strikes. So there's other ways to kind of think about it and look at it. I just like to use it as just another tool in my belt to potentially guide an end of day decision. But as I said earlier, I don't really trade power hour. If I do,
Well,
it's
you're about to start. You're
DTs.
about to start. Otherwise, we're gonna have to find a new Nick.
I mean, you know me. I'm a fan of some end of day degeneracy. It's just sometimes we'll have to see if the trade's there. This has been a relatively slower consolidation. You found a decent trade near those highs, but
Yeah.
it's been since we had. I mean, you and I came on as right after that lunch move basically happened. That drive up higher that we had, and then we've kind of just been consolidating within about a 50-point range on the Nasdaq. So
I'm gonna have to get these drawing tools figured out. But something that, just to kind of, oh, that's the wrong way. Whoops.
you break it, you buy it.
Okay, so something that we're seeing right here is that consolidation after that push up with tons of bid side delta coming in. There's potentially a setup for a little bit of a squeeze here. I'm not going to buy it, but when I talk about absorption, from an order flow perspective, this is a really good, textbook example of what I would be looking for, where you have sideways price action, tons of one-way delta. So basically all of the delta, in this range is on the bid. And, basically there's, like sellers are hitting the tape. We can see that on the time and sales, but they're not really getting anywhere. And so, if this wanted to squeeze higher, there's potentially like a setup where you could take this as a long, right around here in these 108s, 109s, et cetera, to look for like a rotation back up into the upper part of this little volume node that we have at the end of the day here. I'm gonna have to figure out how to get good drawing tools. Some of the settings,
I mean, you're my go-to for NinjaTrader support.
Well, we're going to be in it together.
What's funny is that this was the first platform I ever traded on when I first started trading futures. It's kind of what I learned, at least how to not even understand, but this is the first one I ever used. It's good to be back.
Well, life is full circle.
I know.
And I really actually think like a trade in the 100s would be nice, like a wick below all this absorption, and then pop it right back up and keep all this volume up here. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. So this is where I was talking about earlier. That big positive delta on the March contract is sitting at the 900 spot.
Right here.
Yeah, like right here, right now. We're kind of wicking into it. So, which is weird on the March contract. It looks like that's the point of control in the session.
Interesting.
But I think it's because, like I said, this may have been somebody rolling. Who knows? When all that volume came in right there.
Right.
So it could be a nothing burger. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I hate
And that's the tricky thing with order flow during roll week is, volume is split between two contracts. There are participants that have to do certain things. And so not all the same patterns that you can pull from an order flow perspective, on a standard day don't always play out like you expect them to.
I mean, so far, Leo off that spot, about 20 points and change.
Yeah, I should have taken that trade, I guess.
Yeah. Still kind of consolidating, though. I guess we're going to wait for our MOC here.
What do we got? Oh, 1 minute.
Mm-hmm. We've just been talking.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Do we want the numbers? Do we care?
I've never looked at the market on close numbers. Have you?
No. I just tend to look at the spasm of a candle that occurs. So far, pretty muted.
Yeah. Unimpressive. There's a lot of data to come out, right? I mean, FOMC, there's other economic data to release. So, it makes sense for Mondays. This breakout to, stall and just kind of hang out. We're getting a little pullback now.
Yeah, your IB high, or I guess that first target around 80s coming in.
These 80s, yeah.
So, Leo, I know you asked me as far as like time frames and time of the day that I enjoy trading. Are you much of a Globex guy?
I can't stand Globex. The thing is, the reason I trade NQ is because you get that immediate feedback.
Right.
Right or wrong right away. You kind of get a feel for the market, you know, it kind of has a pulse. And Globex, it's just dead. So I've just learned over time, like I'm just not patient enough to trade Globex. I
Yep.
don't want to sit in front of my computer for 2 hours to wait for 30 points. I just it's just
I'm the
not
same way,
my
man. I
not
can't
my
do it.
thing.
It's gotten me in trouble more than it's like made me money.
Yeah,
So I just can't do it. And also,
right.
I said this earlier, it's a time of the day. Like if I've been staring at charts even for half of the session in theory, like it's probably too much and I don't need to stare at charts again. I mean, I'll look at my phone if I'm just screwing around or laying around and watching TV or something. I may peek if something's going on, especially at times like this in the market. Just I'll have eyeballs. But me sitting trying to make money during Globex, just not my game. I'm definitely red between the hours of the New
For
York
sure. I
close
am as well.
to the New York
Yeah.
Open
Yeah.
historically.
Even pre-market, you know, like if I get involved in too much pre-market activity, I'll carry that over into the RTH Open
Mhm.
and, you know, either have a really good it's either two things. I have great like a really good got like a solid trade pre-market and I just carry that over and continue to run in RTH or I've got a bunch of negative P&L you know, like baggage that you're carrying over into the best part of the session. So I try to stay, you know, not very involved in pre-market activity.
Yeah, it's just that news. I mean, every once in a while, I'll trade the fallout of a 7:30 release,
Yeah,
but I'm not saying I am not the person that's throwing on and praying that the algo doesn't liquidate them when the release comes out. But as far as like waiting for that first like 2 minutes to kind of clear, I mean, I'll take a trade there every once in a while, but still, I usually wait for the open, and even then, I may wait 15 minutes.
right.
Things kind of settle down. At least let the. I mean, I use a 1 minute opening range on NQ, usually a 5 minute and a. I mean, I use a 5 and a 30 and the initial balance, I guess, too on ES, but
Yeah,
yeah, sometimes I like to kind of settle in, especially on a Monday. Like I didn't take a trade probably till about 9:30 and took one trade today and called it a session.
right, right.
Like that's all you need to do some days. It's especially with everything that's going to be on the docket this week and at any time a tweet could completely undo whatever else has happened. So for
Right.
me, FOMC weeks mixed with OPEX, mixed with roll, mixed with Trump at any time, it's a good week to just wait for the right setup. You don't need to be too excited because a lot is going to happen, and there's definitely going to be a decent amount of range this week.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think the worst thing that you can do on a Monday is just get super excited, ready to, you know, click buttons, and then, you know, all of a sudden you're taking trades outside of your process, and you know, usually that ends up bad. At least it does for me. So the more you can wait for things to open up, the better.
Absolutely.
These markets run, you know, 24/7. There's no reason to rush into a trade as soon as the 8:30 bell kicks in. Whoa,
That was
that
violent.
was wicked. It was just a $100 order that got filled up there on the offer and then just pushed it.
Do I not have that bookmarked anymore? I wanted to see what CME's volume was right now on the two
There
contracts.
must be news. Feels just, I don't
Oh,
know.
let me check. I need a squawk in my ear
Does
too.
high be high breakout? Want to take this for the last 5 minutes?
Why not? Let's see. Unless it really is news, but there's 1,000 on the bid.
All right, we'll take a 1 minute micro just for fun.
Yeah, I was gonna
Order filled.
give it a shot.
Oh, look at that. I love it when I get into a trade and we get that flip.
Oh, I got a terrible fill. Wow.
Entry is
What was your entry?
57 three quarter.
Yeah, I had 59s. Not ideal. That 1,000 lots right there, though.
Is it really? Did it drop down?
It's at on the March contract. It's at 19.
Oh, you're looking at the March contract.
See, this is why I don't love rolling on Mondays. once again, this could also just be somebody moving out of the March. Who knows? But it's still there. And ooh, it was filled.
Looks like I might
I'm
get
gonna get
stopped out
stopped.
here.
Filled.
Yep.
Stopped.
Both of us stopped at the same time. I mean, but that's like it's the end of the day. We have this IB high level. Are we going to hold it? There's a decent little bid activity. We saw the flip there from the buy side. So we're the shot with a small trade.
I'd be very upset if we fell back into the range from last week.
Last week's balance.
Yeah, like that's whatever on the March contract, like 750s.
Yeah. Yep. We've got a ways to go. I mean, we'd have to drop, I don't know, 100 points for that.
Yeah.
150. After so many down days, it kind of gets old.
That's what I was kind of saying last night during my prep. Is like I'm a little tired of the selling. But well, I
Right.
think it was like probably the last week. I mean, it was just kind of like every pop was sold, but we were still very much range bound. So it
Right.
wasn't even like good downward momentum where you
Right.
can just kind of close your eyes and push the red button.
Right.
But yeah, I kind of want to see, do we get any sort of relief this week? I don't know. Who knows with FOMC, if we get a dovish Powell, that might cause some buyers to come back into this market. But it feels like every attempt for the last 2 weeks, like 2 weeks ago, when every person on Twitter and everyone and their mom was calling the bottom 2 weeks ago. And here we are 200 points lower than some of our favorite people's bottom calling. But I don't know. Still have not seen like anything from buyers that really gets me super excited to say the downside volatility is over for now.
Right.
I've been wrong before. We got about 90 seconds to the close.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Nick, we will be back on Wednesday.
We will.
The other crew from the OFL team will be on tomorrow at the same time, same place. And thanks everybody for jumping on this afternoon. We'll turn it over to Jim to close us out.
All right, guys, that was awesome, man. Really appreciate you being here with us, trading the close, and your analysis was awesome. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Everyone, thank you for tuning in.
Have a good one.
All right, we'll see you Wednesday. All right, we are almost done. Day one, NinjaTrader Live 2.0. What a great day. Great guests. A lot of great stuff coming up as well going forward here. Real quick, a couple of things I wanted to point out before we go. I did want to, I was looking at Edgeful's Power Hour breakout before we got into the Power Hour. And Power Hour is 3 to 4, right? It's that last hour. And they have a statistic that you could look at, and I did for Mondays a 3-month look back for a Power Hour breakout. And what this is they say, hey, are we going to make new highs or new lows during Power Hour today? And we had a 90% chance that we were not going to make a new high of the day during this 1 hour, and a 10% chance that we would. Well, look what happened here. This was before, this candle right here, this is before the actual Power Hour started, right? We peaked out. We had a peak right there at 2167, right? Right there, boom. That was our yardstick. That was where the touchdown is. And sure enough, the odds were right. The odds were right. We didn't make a new high during these two candles. As a matter of fact, oh my goodness, I'm not sharing my screen. We're going to start this whole thing over, everybody. Hang tight. All right, Kevin, let me know if I'm good. All right, folks, we'll do this one more time. Power Hour breakout. We're not going to make a new high. 90% Monday. Here was the yardstick, right where my crosshairs is, 2167. And sure enough, the next two half-hour candles closed lower than that. This is why I love this. Ordinarily, I would have been like, all right, I'm going to try to get long here. So this, because, we're looking at the trend, right? The trends look pretty good. So check out those stats, edgeful.com. They're pretty awesome. I do want to point out a couple other things really quick. We're almost done. I did want to go to a daily chart on the Euro FX. Now, this is the Euro FX versus the US dollar, and it's a pretty decent proxy for, the value of the dollar. I know every currency pair is a little bit different, but this is currency futures. This is the euro on the numerator, the dollar on the denominator. And look at what's happened the last several days, right? This rally really started taking off around March 3rd, and we're breaking out of a double top right here. A lot of upside potential here as well. So this is kind of a market we're going to talk more about and look at going forward. Lastly, but not leastly, I didn't make that up. Is that a saying? I think it is. Let's go to, not gold. Where did I want to go to? I wanted to go to Dr. Copper again. I know we've been talking a lot about it today. Let's get to a daily chart here. Whoopsie. Hang on. We're almost there. Daily's back this way, Jim. And there we are. Again, continuation candle, bullish engulfing candle today. We powered through that 100% extension. The next target up is 5.033 at that 123. So this is looking like a pretty strong bull market here in copper. A lot of blue sky up here. Even I know I got a black background, but also keep in mind here for copper that there's micros as well. Micro copper is great market to trade if you don't want to trade the big one. And then lastly, let's take a look at what the notes are telling us about FOMC. Again, I'm going to go to a daily. We're hitting the support. We're spending more time on support at 110 and 18 halves than we are at resistance up top. But we've been consolidating sideways here, right? So there isn't any really anticipatory move happening here in the 10-year note heading into Wednesday's FOMC, which perhaps is going to be a nothing burger. Tomorrow morning, remember, we're going to be back live, and we also have, tomorrow's the 18th, we have housing starts and permits, import-export prices, industrial production, early morning numbers. We'll see if any of those move the needles. So in any event, everybody, thanks for coming. I think we had a great first day. Looking forward to tomorrow. In the meantime, the most important message of the day, please be safe out there. Be good to each other.